If you're looking for a fire-breathing, gasoline-powered half-ton supertruck, you're going to have one option in 2024. It's the F-150 Raptor R. Now, I hate to tell you, this is a 2023. It's not a 2024, and you can tell because it doesn't have some of the minor front-end changes that we're going to find for 2024. I think, however, if you could get a deal on a 2023, you should probably go ahead and get one because the changes for 2024 aren't extraordinary. In this video, we're going to talk about those changes, talk about the 2023, and what we know about the 2024 model year coming up, especially its lack of direct competition. In a recent announcement, Ram said that not only is the 6.2-liter V8 powered TRX dead, they're not going to be producing any V8 engines in the Ram 1500 going forward. If you want more power than the 3.6-liter V6, you're going to be looking at a twin-turbo inline six, which is interesting in its own right, but it's nothing like what we find under the hood of this Raptor R. 700 horsepower for 2023, over 700 horsepower for 2024, although Ford has been cagey on that detail just yet, puts this in an entirely different segment than the upcoming Baja-focused version of the inline six Ram. That's going to be targeting maybe the regular Raptor, we're not quite sure yet, and it definitely puts this in a different category versus the GMC AT4X or the ZR2 from Chevy. On the front end, you'll notice that the 2024 looks a little bit different. We have slightly different headlights, slightly different grille treatments. I think that they definitely belong in the family though. The big change is going to be down here. We get a modular bumper that you're also going to find in the F-150 Tremor. The modular bumper is one logical reason to get 2024 over 2023, but you could always swap this one out yourself. If you really want that factory look and that factory finish look, especially the unique cutout portion of that bumper, you might want to wait for the 2024 model year vehicle. We don't have pricing on it just yet, but I suspect it's going to be a pretty decent bump over this in 2023 because there is no competition. I guess if you're talking about price tag, there's competition because the price tag of this one is $111,000 plus tax, and there are going to be some other six-figure trucks out there, but none that are quite like this. Helping differentiate the Raptor R from the regular Raptor, we have the red R, we have some red badging, and then all of these little 8s on the graphic all the way around the vehicle. If you actually come in close, this graphics package right back here on the rear quarter panel says obviously Raptor with the big red R, but it also says V88888888888. It's kind of an interesting twist. You don't really notice it until you really get up close. Most of what you're seeing are the 8s, but there is an occasional little V peppered around. The Raptor's format doesn't change really for 2024. We still get the relatively small bed behind a pretty darn big cab. This is nice and roomy, so you can easily put adults in there. If you want an off-road vehicle that will easily hold 4 6'3" people with no problem, you definitely want to take a look at this. This one has the optional rock rail steps there. That's kind of an interesting touch, but probably one that I would skip. If you're interested in Ford's new swing-to-the-side tailgate, you're going to have to wait for a 2024, although it is worth noting that Ford has not been clear as to whether the Raptor R will actually get that particular option or not. Down here we have a metal bumper, just as you'd expect, 7-pin and 4-pin wiring harness connections, and we get a slightly reduced towing capacity in the Raptor and Raptor R versus the rest of the F-150 lineup, mainly because of the suspension design. Still have recovery hooks back here. They're painted black to blend in with just about everything in the back. And the format of this is a little bit different than what we find in the GMC Sierra AT4X because it has a slightly higher towing capability, obviously different engine lineup. You can get a 3-liter inline six diesel or a 6.2-liter naturally aspirated V8 engine in that model. But towing and payload capacity, they're going to be minorly higher in that model because it's not quite the same sort of off-road tune as we find here. Payload and towing capacity may be higher in the GMC and the Chevy, but it's not a world of difference. It's only a few hundred pounds when it comes to the towing capability, and payload capability, it's almost 200 pounds. This one is rated for 1,357 pounds. The last AT4X 1500 that I was driving out in Montana had a temporary sticker in it that said its payload rating was about 1,550 pounds. So we're not talking about an enormous difference, but I still would kind of like the extra 200 pounds of payload capability because you could put more stuff in the bed or more stuff in the back. Remember that this is 1,357 pounds, including all passengers, the driver, and all of their cargo, and your hitch weight in the rear. So you are going to have to give up a reasonable amount of capability in order to get this kind of off-road ability. The Raptor and the Raptor R have a great deal in common. They use essentially the same 10-speed automatic transmission, basically the same four-wheel drive system and software programming, basically the same sort of driveline components all the way around. But they have very different personalities because the engines are very, very different. The regular Raptor uses a twin-turbo 3.5-liter V6 engine that produces 450 horsepower, over 500 pound-feet of torque. The Raptor R basically borrows a 5.2-liter supercharged engine from a Mustang, dials the dial all the way up to 11, and then trades out a lot of componentry for truck duty. So this is not simply a Mustang engine jammed under this hood. It has been thoroughly reworked for use in a truck. This takes power up to 700 horsepower, torque all the way up to 650. For 2024, we know it's going to be at least that or higher because Ford has said the Raptor is going to be at least 700 ponies. We don't know exactly what that means. Could that be 701? Could it be 750? Could it be 800? We just don't know at this point in time, but don't expect too many major changes. Expect it to be just lightly massaged around the edges because the Ram TRX no longer exists. And it is essentially a different reworked version of the same 5.2-liter supercharged engine. So power figures are probably not going to change dramatically. It's now time to check out the interior. Let's start with the driver's seat. We have a two-way adjustable lumbar support. I am a bit surprised that we don't get a bit more adjustability for $111,000. Of course, these seats are heated and ventilated, and they feature a combination of leather upholstery and this imitation suede material that is perforated in the center that really does help keep not only sweating at bay in hotter weather, it also really helps grip you in the seat. That's why so many performance cars have this sort of suede-like texture. It's perforated in the center, not perforated over here on the outboard side, but you should keep in mind it can start to pill over time. Up here we have the Raptor logo, obviously embroidered there. Big B&O logo there because we actually have surround speakers integrated right there into those headrests. Let's go ahead and check out the back seat so you can get an idea of what's going on back here. Basically pretty typical F-150 fare in the back, so similar design to these rear seats where we have the leather up top, that imitation suede section right there, red stitching on the outside to help dress things up. The seat bottom cushion flips up in a 60-40 fashion, giving us access to this cargo tray. It can be collapsed to make the floor effectively flat back here, or it can be left in this position to help store cargo. We then have a 400-watt inverter right there. You can see the ambient lighting for the rear passengers and some USB charge-only ports there. Really big and wide center console with two really big air vents back there and more of those Bang & Olufsen speakers in the rear doors. One thing I've always loved about this generation of F-150 is that we have this huge panoramic moonroof. You can see just how far back there it goes, almost to the rear passengers' heads. But then they haven't really sacrificed a lot of room aside from that. So the rear head area is very large and very square. It does kind of dish up right back there, just about where a passenger might want to rest their heads. But if you want the most room on the inside, don't go for the panoramic moonroof, but bear in mind that it does actually still allow the cab to be pretty darn square. You can really see that square format from that angle there. That design actually makes it pretty comfortable to be a passenger in the back. Now let's go ahead and hop up front. Press that start button and the engine does roar to life. Now, if you want the car to start in quiet mode, you have a few options. You can actually adjust that in here in the infotainment system. Choose quiet start, and then you can choose what times of the day you want it to actually start in the quiet exhaust mode. You could also press the button, turn the car on, then select the exhaust mode from this little button, and then start it. That button cycles you through the various different exhaust modes. Exhaust quiet, normal, sport, and of course the absolutely raucous Baja mode. That's for off-road use only, so they say. Whether you're inside or outside, that exhaust mode sounds pretty cool. But of course, it's also going to wake up those neighbors. Moving up to the ceiling, we have the auxiliary switches. I really love the fact that Ford gives us so many. There are 6 of them, they're illuminated at night, and they have an on-off position light. That's all a really handy touch. Behind that, we have a sunglass holder, and then the controls, of course, for this large panoramic moonroof. You can stop the shade in this midway position, or you can open it all the way, and then, of course, this front panel opens, and as you can see, it is a pretty large front pane. So this is not limited like some panoramic moonroofs that are on the large side but don't open fully. This one, you can actually open it to just about that maximum front passenger's head position. We have 4-way adjustable headrests, adjustable shoulder belts, again, that Raptor badging there. Lots of soft touch materials around the cabin, but definitely some hard plastics here and there as well. The general design of this cabin has not appreciably changed for 2024. Some of the materials have changed, some of the colors have changed, but the general design layout and general theme has not changed appreciably. So again, keep that in mind. Over here we have the dual glove box setup, carbon fiber trim on top, big bin glove box below. You could fit an 11-inch tablet computer barely over there on that side, but as you can see, it's not quite symmetrical. So it's not quite as roomy as some folks might want. Here in the middle of everything, we have a big touchscreen infotainment system. The screen is running one of the more recent versions of Ford software, so not too many major changes for the 2024 model year vehicle. Up here we have a 360-degree camera button, a button for the parking systems. This is the trail control option, basically one pedal driving for off-roading. Down here we have the Pro Trailer backup assist knob. Down here we have the controls, not just for the 4-wheel drive system. Right now we're in 4 Auto. We also have a drive mode selector, and this is definitely a little bit different than the other F-150s. You can see over here, tow haul, slippery modes, and then we have a variety of different off-road modes there, off-road, Baja, rock crawl, etc. Back towards the center console, we have the controls for the dual zone automatic climate control, the heated and cooled front seats, nice touch there. Big Qi wireless charging mat, USB-C and regular USB inputs there. Basically the same shifter here that we've seen for a while. It can power down there so that way you can use this entire area as a desk. I'm not quite sure why you would need to do that in a Raptor, but it is actually a really nice touch that honestly I have used in some of the trucks that we've had, especially something like the Lightning when you're DC fast charging. So with that out of the way, we can access a really big storage area right here in the middle. It more than makes up for that smaller glove box. You can put hanging files in there if you want to, or just, I don't know, drop that divider right in there. Back over on the driver's side, we find the regular F-150 wheel with a bit more heft to the grips, a nice big sport grip there. Red mark up top, so that way you know which side is the shiny side up. Big paddles on the back. These are big magnesium paddles. These have a fantastic feel. They're metal, they're ribbed on the back, and they move with the steering wheel, which is my preference. Back on the front of the wheel, we have a slightly different button module versus a regular F-150. This R button allows you to pull up your My Mode settings, so it'll take you to a whole combination of different vehicle settings just at the press of that button. And then over here on this side, we have a button to control that multifunction LCD cluster. Also over here, we have a button to adjust the steering qualities of the vehicle. You can see those adjustments right there. Sport, Baja, Normal, Comfort. We can do the same for the dampers. 3 different damper settings there, and then of course that exhaust, which we can put back to quiet, so that way I don't bother the neighbors. The design and the tune of the suspension in the Raptor has always separated this from something like an AT4X or a ZR2. This is definitely very focused on Baja-style racing, dune jumping, things like that. So we have a dedicated suspension design for the Raptor and Raptor R to help enable that. But we are going to get some tweaks for 2024 in the suspension. We're getting new dampers, which are going to help rebound control, which again is going to be very Baja deserty focused as far as its capability and the improvements over this generation system. If you are buying a Raptor just for regular pickup truck duty because you want the extra power or you like the look or whatever it is that you're doing, or you are doing more traditional truck off-roading, it's not going to make as big of a difference as if you are going out to a dune and playing on dunes every weekend. If that's your goal, 2024. If it's not, you might want to go 2023, not because it's going to be better for your application, but because it could be a little bit less expensive. All right, it's time to get the Raptor R out on the road, and that of course means that we need to talk about acceleration runs. So here's how we prep for that. I simply use this drive mode toggle, and then I go from normal mode all the way over here to sport. With sport mode engaged and auto brake hold on, it's automatically going to put me in 4 Auto, and then hang on for all the squealing, because holy shit, there is so much power from this engine that you really have to be careful, which is why we didn't go all the way to 60. Not quite clear whether I could have with these tires around that corner. 0 to 60 happened in 3.6 seconds, time after time after time. If you put this in 2-wheel drive mode, which is where a lot of the drive modes are going to default you, then you just need to be prepared to really burn out your tires very quickly. This has so much low end torque, so much instant power, and such a low effective gear ratio thanks to the 10-speed auto and the final drive ratio that you can really roast the rear tires if you're not paying attention. This will even slip the front tires if the road surface is less than perfect, which is exactly why we have that for auto mode. 0 to 60, 3.6 seconds every time. Now you don't need to brake torque it because that will actually make you go slower. This has a accelerator pedal, brake pedal interlock, so if you put your foot on both pedals at the same time, you don't actually get too much. That's because Ford said they did not want this engine to overwhelm the brakes and basically roast your brake pads, which it will absolutely do if you aren't careful. I know this is wrong, I've been told it so many times by so many truck fans, but this is the kind of truck like the TRX that I really wish was available in a street truck format. It's something that we haven't seen in a long time in America, but this Raptor has everything that you would need to do that, except for the suspension tune and the ground height, ground clearance, and the tires, of course. But this has a decent ride quality. It has fantastic power. It has a four-wheel drive system that can do it. Did I mention the power yet again? What it is missing is grip. 60 to 0 took 140 feet. That's of course because it has KO2s on it. These are very off-road focused all-terrain tires. They're just not going to handle daily driving and stopping like a regular all-season on, I don't know, insert any other F-150 here. So in the average F-150, it would be likely below 130 feet stopping distance. This is going to take at least 10 feet longer. Depending on the surface, it could take even longer than that. And panic stops, you're definitely going to feel the high-profile nature of the tires. If I really stab this, you'll definitely feel the truck moving around. But upon closer inspection from the outside, it's not as much suspension dive as you might think. It's not because we have that big, heavy engine. It's because the tires are pretty tall, and you're getting a lot of tire compression in that braking maneuver. So definitely something to keep in mind. If this had maybe 45 series, summer tires on it, maybe 3 inches lower, this could be an absolutely fantastic replacement for the old Lightning, the one that I keep thinking about whenever people talk about a Lightning. That would be absolutely epic. Sadly, no car manufacturer seems to want to give us that particular truck. Now, as far as Raptor goes, if you want to know how this does off-road, I spent an extensive amount of time in a dune park in Michigan in a Raptor R at its launch, so be sure and reference that video. Bottom line, absolutely bonkers fun. That is the kind of place where you will need this extra power. If you want all the power delivered for hours and hours at end because you're worried about bogging down in sand, things like that, that's where you want the Raptor R over the turbocharged Raptor. The power delivery's instant nature is definitely a big advantage, but you really will have to be in an off-road park in order to exercise it because out here, there's just too much power to really make too much use of it. Aside from towing, which is going to come in under 9,000 pounds, so you're still not really going to make too much use of it. Ford's 10-speed automatic has ratios that are really close and shifts that are really, really fast, which is why if I start from a stop and just accelerate gently, say like you might do in regular stop-and-go traffic or just your daily drive when you're not in a rush, you'll end up fairly soon here. We're at 25 miles an hour. You'll end up fairly soon at around 35 or 45 miles an hour, at which point you will have used 7 or 8 gears, and the RPM of the engine may have varied by maybe 400 RPM from top to bottom. There are times where this 10-speed auto can actually feel like a CVT. If you're not paying attention, all you're really hearing is that engine exhaust note at almost the same level time after time after time with maybe little interruptions, little blips. And that's because the ratios are really close together. That is exactly what you want out of an engine like this. Because it's going to deliver its peak horsepower and its peak torque at a particular RPM or relatively narrow RPM range, you want to keep the engine there as long as possible. And this 10-speed allows that to happen. That's also why this 10-speed is so fantastic when paired with GM's 3-liter inline-6 turbo diesel. The 10-speed auto in here and in the Silverado and Sierra, it's essentially the same 10-speed. It was co-developed by Ford and GM, and it is one of the best automatic transmissions in a truck that I've ever driven. In a passenger car, I think it can be a little busy. There are kind of a lot of ratios going on, but in a pickup truck, it has a lot of benefits. It gets you 0 to 60, obviously, in 3.6 seconds here, but in the other trucks, it really helps improve towing capability and hauling capability because there is always the right ratio for your situation. You'll really notice that in the regular F-150 with, say, the 2.7-liter turbocharged engine and maybe 9,000 pounds on the back. it's going to still feel really peppy, even though that is the smallest engine available. When it comes to the handling score, I'm going to have to give this Raptor R a D-, and it's all because of the tires and the off-road tuning, just as you'd expect. There is no free lunch, and clearly if you want this kind of capability, you have to give up on-road capability. That's just the way that it works. And again, that's kind of why I would be really interested to see what a street truck version of this would be like. Don't get me wrong, KO2s are fantastic tires off-road. It's just that they are off-road tires, logically skewed more towards off-road driving than on-road driving. I commute on roads like this every day, and statistically, most of the people that are going to buy a Raptor spend more of their time on-road than off-road. So if I were you, I would recommend keeping a spare set of wheels and tires around with your off-road tires on them. Just drop them on for that one time a month that you want to off-road. Yes, they are going to be big. Yes, they are going to be heavy. But you are going to get much better on-road driving dynamics and better road safety, I would say, generally speaking. Handling is not exactly going to be this vehicle's forte on-road. Off-road is where it really shines. Unlike almost, well, anything that goes 0 to 60 in 3.6 seconds, the ride quality in the Raptor and Raptor R is pretty fantastic, and that's thanks to these adaptive dampers. Honestly, I think every F-150 should have the option to get these dampers right from the factory, because this just has really great ride quality. This is the kind of suspension tune where it's easy to live out in the country. If you live on a ranch or you live down a gravel road like I do, absolutely no problem. Even if I put this in the sport mode, the dampers are not quite as firm as a lot of regular F-150s. Now, obviously the downside to that is the payload and towing capability that is reduced because of the suspension design in the Raptor and Raptor R. But when it comes to ride quality, especially long distance ride quality, this is quite simply one of the most comfortable F-150s. The only thing that I think is more comfortable than this would actually be the F-150 Lightning. That's because it has a fully independent suspension and all the added weight of that battery pack. But washboard pavement, big bumps here, potholes, etc., this practically glides over them without really upsetting the rear suspension, which is still a solid axle in the back. As far as ride quality goes, I think the Raptor R wins over the TRX. Yeah, again, TRX is gone, but I think it still wins. But the regular Ram 1500 with the adaptive air suspension is still, for me at least, the best riding truck in this segment. But strangely enough, Raptor and Raptor R get pretty close. Back out on the paved road, cabin noise came in at a pretty hushed 70 decibels. Quite surprising given the KO2s on this vehicle. Now, our cabin noise tests are done at 50 miles an hour. We did notice a bit more difference at 70 miles an hour, where you really start to get some of those big tire noises into the cabin. But thanks to the body-on-frame design, you're still going to get more isolation than in a decent number of other vehicles to choose from. Now, obviously, the other fly in the ointment for the Raptor R, and maybe the reason you might want to get the regular Raptor, is going to be fuel economy. You're going to notice a pretty significant difference between the two. Over this week of mixed driving, I have been averaging 10.9 miles per gallon. Yes, 10.9. At least it's not single digits, but we are just talking barely above. If you're doing any sort of off-roading, if you're towing, if you're hauling, expect pretty darn low fuel economy numbers. The regular Raptor, it is not exactly an efficient vehicle either, but it is going to be notably more efficient than the V8 version. You'll lose some of the capability, but if you're really concerned about cost of operation, you might want to check that out. And that is kind of the tricky bit. You are obviously going to have to pay to play if you want the ultimate off-road truck, and this is it. You're going to have to pay $111,000 for this truck specifically, and then you're going to have to deal with another set of 11s, which is the fuel economy, definitely on the low side. If you did not need this kind of off-road capability, you could get a different kind of off-road capability in something like diesel Sierra AT4X that could give you 25, 26 miles per gallon on a daily basis pretty easily, but it's going to be nothing like any version of the Raptor. The diesel is going to have a very different character. It's definitely going to be more geared towards more, I guess I would say more Wrangler-style off-roading, although it's much bigger than a Wrangler. It's not going to be the thing you want to take to a dune park with really deep sand dunes where you really need to keep things spun up in order to stay unstuck. Unless you love bringing max tracks and recovering, then, get the diesel. If you don't, you might want to get this. You just have to be prepared for that really low fuel economy number. Unfortunately, I don't know 2024 pricing yet, and we don't know exactly how much power the Raptor R is going to get either, but you can expect that both of those figures will be higher than 2023. The regular Raptor actually didn't have as bad of a price bump as I thought it would. It's only about $1,200, so just under $80,000 for the regular twin-turbo Raptor. If you want the V8 and you want this level of feature content on your V8 Raptor, then you're looking over $100,000. This one, $111,500 as equipped, before, of course, tax and title. So definitely a pretty healthy price tag. But you get quite a lot of truck for your money, and you also get the only truck in this segment. We have big meaty KO2s, we have functional exhaust vents, we have 700 horsepower from a supercharged V8 engine, which is something that Ram will no longer give you, and GM decided never to give us for some reason. In this generation of the Silverado and Sierra twins, they just decided not to make a Raptor-like vehicle. Raptor came first, Ram said, hey, hold our beer, we're gonna get a TRX in there. GM and Chevy went in a different direction, and they focused perhaps a bit more on traditional off-road styles, rock climbing, just regular trails, etc. They didn't choose to give us a dune jumper like Ford did with the Raptor and the Raptor R. So for me, for 2024, and logically for the rest of 2023, even though there's not a lot of 2023 left, the Raptor and Raptor R truly stand alone. But we are going to get an interesting twist in the upcoming Ram 1500 RNO. Apparently it's going to be in Rhino, something along those lines. That's going to give you 500 and some odd horsepower out of its high output 3-liter inline 6 engine. Clearly not a Raptor R competitor, but they are very directly targeting the regular Raptor and kind of sideways the AT4X and maybe ZR2. We don't have any details about that. We don't know if, for instance, it's going to have the wide body treatment that has always made the Raptor so distinctive, but those details are probably going to be coming over the next few months or so. So be sure and stay tuned and let me know, are you interested in a Raptor or a Raptor R? Have you spent much time out there hunting for one? Raptor Rs are really hard to find. It's almost like hen's teeth. But at this point in time, there are actually a few Ford dealers near me. I have reached out to a bunch of them, and I have tracked down at least 10 Raptors, regular Raptors, that are either in transit or already at dealers that have cash on the hood. So most likely, it's going to be several $1,000s less to get a 2023 Raptor than a 2024. You aren't going to get the upgraded bumper, you aren't going to get the tweaked looks, and you aren't going to find the upgraded Fox dampers. But other than that, I think I might want to save the cash and just get the 2023. Let me know what you think about that down there in the comments section, and stay tuned because, again, hopefully we'll be driving the 2024 with the extra horsepower just as soon as possible. See all of you next week.